Hello, Sawubona, Moeni, Avusheni. Good to see you. Nice to have you with us on the final OUTA Hour. Thank you for joining us. When I say us, me and the OUTA team, I'm Tom London, with you for the next 60 minutes as we wrap up the OUTA Hour this evening with some exciting news on OUTA's new direction, the new content you'll be seeing, and the new things that will be appearing on OUTA's social media sites. We'll get to that towards the end of the program. But the important stuff right in the beginning, and what's important to you if you're a ratepayer in South Africa and specifically in the city of Johannesburg. Well, your properties are about to be valuated by the city of Johannesburg, and that sets off all sorts of bells, warning bells, some may say. Is your property worth $1 million and going to be valued at $2 million tomorrow? What can you do about it? What is OUTA doing about it? Find out on this OUTA Hour. And remember to join us in the comment section, either on YouTube or Facebook Live, wherever you may be watching. So firstly, a very warm welcome to you. Stay with us for the next 60 minutes. There'll be some valuable information coming your way. Let's see who our chief whip is this evening. Who have we got? Claire Feldman has held this status for a long time, but oh wow, Vut Zarko is first up tonight. There we go, Chief Whip, a new one this evening. Thank you, Vut, and we'll say hello to you as you join us this evening in just a moment. Just say hello, like we normally do on the OUTA Hour. And I think the big hello right up front is to the CEO of OUTA, Wayne Duvenage. Let's find out how Wayne's doing and what he's been up to. How's it, Wayne?
Yo, how's it, Tom?
Good.
How's it to the viewers out there? Man, it's been another hectic week, and we can tell you more about that. I mean, the budget speech today was very interesting, and our statement on that will be going out very shortly, our response to it. And we will share with you a bit later on in the show what we're doing in our strategy. So looking forward to that discussion with you. And we've got Ilse here as well talking about what we're going to be doing. Tim's going to give us a lovely overview of this whole Johannesburg rates valuation. It's very important that citizens pay attention to that discussion. So lovely to be with you this evening. Great energy, and it's been a hectic week, but thank goodness tomorrow's Saturday.
All right, you confused me for a second, but yeah.
It's Saturday somewhere. I think that's what Wayne meant to say.
If you're watching on Friday, then it is tomorrow. Yes. Wayne, before we jump into the chat with Tim about the city of Johannesburg and the property valuation role, just give us a heads up, a high level look at this from OUTA's perspective. What is worrying you about property valuations in Johannesburg?
Well, I think the first thing is we must know this. The city of Joburg's broke. It is in dire straits and financial situation. So what they're doing, as most municipalities are, especially broken ones, and Joburg is a broken municipality or metro, is that they are very, very hungry for money. And the one way you do this is to up your rates and taxes. This is now every 5 or 4 years or so, they update the valuation of properties. And this is a big way to get this massive increase, as opposed to adjusting the rate that they charge against the value of your property, which they push up around about inflation. So that rate, that tariff is still going to go up by about 4.5%. And then on top of that, your properties will be revalued. Now, what we are seeing is that this is anything between, well, no increase and a couple of 100% increases. In some cases, in the Ekurhuleni property valuation role, when this was updated a couple of years ago, it was a few 1,000%. So this will impact on what you pay in rates and taxes. And the frustration is, Tom, as every Joburg citizen and many citizens or residents in towns around the country will see a degradation of service delivery. So our city gets worse. Infrastructure is crumbling. Money isn't being spent on maintenance and repairs or planning, but it is being spent on bonuses and increases and more consultants. So we just have badly managed cities, and And when they run out of money, they come back to their residence. It is time now. It is time for citizens to start standing up, especially at the local government level. And this is where we'll share with you some of the strategy where we're going a bit more. But the start of this is for OUTA to start influencing the local government space. And Tim will give us a lowdown of today's webinar that we had, which was well visited, was well subscribed, and it's going to be quite interesting.
All right, let's chat to Tim Tyrrell. Tim is the CAN project manager, the Community Action Network. And perhaps, Tim, we can start by examining CAN. What is CAN?
Thank you, Tom, and good evening, everybody. CAN stands for Community Action Network, and it is a digital platform which enables community organizations, typically ratepayers and residents associations, to organize themselves properly, to be able to create a cogent and integrated membership role, to be able to communicate with those members effectively. It also gives them access through a portal to a whole host of information ranging from shared experiences with other community organizations through to pertinent legislation about municipal affairs, resolutions and minutes of council meetings, and an opportunity to network with other organizations in the same space. The third thing that it does, and this is probably its key hook, so to speak, is that it provides a mechanism for gathering funds. And we're strongly promoting the notion of paid membership of these organizations. While many citizens might say, but I pay for services through my rates and taxes, and therefore I'm entitled to the services, which in most cases, particularly Johannesburg, are not being delivered properly. So we're suggesting to them, look, that may be true, but unless we join hands and do something constructive and something powerful, the situation isn't going to get better. It's probably going to get worse. So paid membership in order to be able to build up resources, to be able to launch initiatives and be an effective organization is an essential part of what we're suggesting. And this is all made available to communities through the CAN platform.
Well, property valuations are forming part of what you're doing within the scope of CAN. How can people become part of CAN or get hold of CAN? And then we'll revisit this right at the end and just remind you.
Well, CAN has its own website. We've developed the platform over the last 2 years. We've been in partnership with a software house who has helped us actually build this thing basically from scratch. It has its own website, www.can.org.za. So people who are interested are invited to visit that site or to get in touch with me or OUTA and ask about the platform, and we would be very happy to tell them about its benefits and to help them become more effective organizations.
Now, if you're a ratepayer, and specifically a Johannesburg ratepayer, but you could be a ratepayer anywhere in the country because chances are that these property valuations will come to a city or town near you. But if you're a Johannesburg ratepayer, then pay close attention and also use the comment section to ask questions tonight. Any questions you've got for Tim or Wayne around the Johannesburg property valuation role in the upcoming valuations, please pop those comments or questions in the comments section below the video, and I'll put as many of them to Tim as possible. Tim, what is the current property valuation role?
Okay, good question. The valuation role is a municipal register of all the properties in a city, in this case, Johannesburg. Something shy of 1 million properties around the city are registered as entities, and those properties obviously carry a value. And it is that value, using various calculations, which determines the rates that ratepayers, in other words, property owners, pay to the municipality. Now, just a little bit of background. The valuation role and the rates attached to it feed the municipal budget in a very significant way. Current figures suggest that about 21.5% of the 58 billion rand budget that the City of Johannesburg is operating on comes from rates. That's a shade over 12 billion rand, and it is gathered from commercial and residential property owners through the rates, which are based on the valuation role. Now, every 4 years, the valuation role gets revisited and redone. So this is where the adjustments come in, and this is where, in some cases, it causes grave anxiety. There will be cases where properties are valued lower, which would suggest that rates will go down. In many cases, though, properties go up, and often in what appears to be an unfair and irrational way. So that has a corresponding knock-on effect onto rates, and ratepayers and property owners then get exposed to much higher rates and taxes that they pay to the municipality. So That's more or less the structure and the intention of the valuation role. There are all sorts of mechanisms behind that in order to be able to engage with the municipality about your particular property.
Now, let's say I own a property in Johannesburg. Let's say I've got a 3-bedroom home in one of the suburbs of Johannesburg. How does that get valued, and what happens in a valuation process that we're about to see? How does the city determine my home's value?
It's a good question, because how do you actually go about revaluing every 4 years 1 million odd properties? That's a toughie.
Yeah, you can't value each one individually.
Indeed, they can't be physically inspected and adjusted accordingly. So much of this is a desktop exercise. Obviously, there are many factors which are built in, and the formulae and the rules, if you like, that are applied are very complex. But there is an adjustment which is brought about every 4 years by the municipality, as I said, based on regional and district market conditions. There may be migration in or out of a particular area which affect property rates. There may be industrial activities. There may be environmental degradation, which brings property values down. There may be developments happening in that area which in fact push property values up. And then stands become more desirable to own, and therefore they command a higher price. So all of those factors influence the valuation role, and that's how it's done. But it is done essentially as a desktop exercise, but a complex one, which takes all those factors into account.
Now, you'd like to think that when the city of Johannesburg is going through the process you just mentioned, that property owners would have an opportunity to participate or object or be part of this in some way. What current participation opportunities are there for homeowners in Johannesburg?
All right. So the valuation roll has just been published mid-February, and the deadline for registering objections in most cases with the municipality is the 31st of March. So there are spaces on the City of Johannesburg website where there is an objections tab where they can go ahead and go through the process, register, open an account, make sure that they are in contact with the municipality and submit their case. The other way they can do it is through OUTA, where if they visit our website, if you look on the projects tab and then scroll down to special projects, the very first one that comes up is the COJ valuation role. And if one follows the prompts on that tab, you will see that there are opportunities to A, find out the value of your property as per the municipal register, then to compare it with the property value presented on your municipal bill. If those two are out of whack, then the idea is that you would, based on your own judgment, and it must be an objective judgment as far as you can possibly do, because vexatious and frivolous engagements with the municipality simply waste everybody's time. But there are then various steps that one can follow, and we have links to those processes on our website so that that service and that process is readily available to ratepayers so that they can engage in a meaningful way with the municipality.
My guess is if you're a homeowner in Johannesburg and the city is about to value your property or revalue your property, that you'd want the value to look something like the amount of money you could get if you sold it on the open market today. Or am I off in that assumption?
Well, I think that's the sensible middle road. I think from a financial point of view, as far as the municipal valuation is concerned, you would want that to be as low as possible, because that, in fact, determines the rates that you pay. However, there are some negative implications of that, because then it starts to impact other types of valuations. So you have a free market valuation, which will go through the property business or the property industry, and they may be influenced by that, or they may say, Connor, that's not the right way to do it, and they will attach a different value. And then in the next cycle, that will influence the city in terms of how they value the property. So there is this dynamic between all of the various different entities as far as valuations is concerned.
I'm looking at some of the comments coming in. I'm just going to look for the one with the angry face. Steve says they just added 500,000 Rand to mine. I'm sure that would come as quite a shock to any homeowner unless your property is worth 50 million bucks. What does this mean for homeowners?
Well, I think the stock message is if you do nothing, that's what will stand. In other words, you have been told that your property, according to the municipality, is now valued at X. However, there are opportunities for objecting, and there are opportunities to lodge a case. if people are sufficiently aggrieved where the current valuation or the new valuation is out of kilter with what is on the existing municipal register, then of course they must make a decision as to whether to engage the municipality or not. 500,000 sounds like a lot, but it's a relative term. If you have a 10 million rand property, 500,000 it's a lot, but it's not excessive. That's 5%.
Yeah.
But if you have a property worth $1.5 million and you're adding 500,000,
then it's a big increase. Yeah.
Jump. Exactly. So it's all relative to the state of your property, or the value, the existing value of your property. And I'm not poo-pooing 500,000. That's a big number by anybody's guess. So yeah, that probably would be caused, but it would need to be against an understanding of what the existing value of the property is.
We're going to talk about the webinar that CAN hosted today. We'll get to that in a moment, and also what OUTA and CAN can do to assist Johannesburg ratepayers, so stay tuned for that. But let's dip into the comment section and see what you've got to say on the other side of this camera tonight as we discuss this topic. I'm looking at Sue Truebody's comment. Sue says, I've tried to check my valuation, but the last two fields required do not make sense, so I'm unable to get my valuation. Is this, is the system set up and working properly?
Look, Tom, I think everybody has their view. Bear in mind that we're working with a large and, I guess, perhaps indifferent bureaucratic machine.
Sure.
Those processes are not always user-friendly. And yes, I personally had some difficulty when I went through a mock exercise today in order to try and actually give a live example of how those rates compare, or the values compare. Excuse me. So, yes, some of that is a little bit daunting, perhaps. What I would suggest to Sue is that she goes onto the OUTA website, and on that is an opportunity to log a question with OUTA. We will pick up that query and we will see what we can do in order to be able to help her through that process. But if she's hitting a brick wall in terms of the COJ offerings and the COJ website, my strong recommendation is to get in touch with OUTA and we'll help her.
There we go. An invitation to you, Sue, to get in touch with CAN and OUTA and put that particular problem you've got into the pot, so to speak. Ros Brook brings something quite interesting up. Ros Brook says the pensioner rebate value allowance of 2.5 million has not been increased. Please would you comment? Yet a 42% valuation increase on a property.
Look, the rebate issue is a fraught one, because one can never be sure that that threshold has been determined with the needs of pensioners and people who have high overheads and perhaps limited means in mind. So if you shift the threshold up, there may be a softening in the rates, but at the end of the day, those two will balance out, so you end up paying the same to the COJ. If the threshold remains the same, then, as in this case, it's very likely that the rates will go up, or the property valuation itself will go up significantly, which would then cause an adjustment in rates.
Sure.
So a 42% upward increase in valuation would probably trigger an inquiry, and we'd be very happy to help that ratepayer as well.
Well, here's the answer to our question about Steve's property valuation. That he got that 500,000 rand increase. He said the original value was only 1.4, and then 500,000 got lopped on top of that. So that's almost 30% increase on the value.
Yeah, it's more. So that would, if it was my property, it would certainly trigger an objection and trigger an inquiry. And if he needs assistance, we'll be very happy to help.
How successful do you think Johannesburg residents will be when they lodge objections through the normal formal channels?
Look, Tom, we're trying as hard as we can to offer them ways and means of dealing with this. It's a very restrictive and fraught process. One of the primary problems is that there is just simply not enough time. The valuation roll has just been published mid-February, and the deadline for objections is the 31st of March. That gives them, give or take, 45 days. We would suggest that something closer to 90 days would be reasonable. So immediately you're shutting out a lot of people who are hesitant and who are unsure about the process simply because the time window is very narrow. So that's one. The other issues, well, you have to take them as they go. The process is essentially very bureaucratic. I suppose it could be argued for the cynics among us that they make it as difficult as possible so that the volume of objections that are lodged is reduced as far as it can possibly go. And I suppose there may be some wisdom to that. I think one has to be careful about making those kinds of allegations, because while the inclination is to be very angry and indignant about adjustments, the only way to go about it that is going to yield any results is to constructively engage with the municipality. If one comes in arm swinging and fighting, it's going to put backs up, and it's going to be a counterproductive process. So while there may be some agony going on behind the scenes, my strong recommendation to ratepayers is that they engage as constructively as they possibly can.
I think what you're going to find amongst many people who own properties in Johannesburg, and it's dependent, I suppose, on the area you're in, is what Nick Batulis is busy writing in the comment section as we speak. Nick says, in our area, we have no street lights or sewage networks. I think they're using septic tanks. However, at times the city still charges for sewage. Despite this, our rates and taxes are increased. They've even registered my residence as a business property, which we have tried changing to no avail. It seems it is easy to go for soft targets, and Nick feels it's extortion using the law. And do you think that this is a growing anger even amongst homeowners in Johannesburg, saying, I'm paying full price for these services that you say you're offering, yet when I pull out of my driveway, I pull out onto a potholed road, the sewers are backed up, the water's flowing down my street, and a lot of what you promised me as a resident isn't actually happening?
Look, there's no question that the rates part of one's municipal bill pays for infrastructure and services. And if those services are declining and decaying, the citizens have every right to say, why should I pay more in the face of receiving less? So that principle is very strong in this case. It's common cause that Johannesburg particularly, and even worse that it is the largest metro in the country, is suffering severe constraints in terms of the quality and the quantity of its service delivery. So the natural inclination is to be very indignant when property values shoot up and the visible and tangible services that one sees and feels when you drive out of your driveway are in decline. So it's a completely understandable feeling. It's a completely understandable reaction. And yes, I would say under those circumstances, it is absolutely the duty of every citizen to engage with the municipality. It's interesting to note, and if I may just deviate for a minute, 2 years ago in the city of Ekurhuleni, there was an organization called the Residents Action Group. They were originally a security organization, but they kind of evolved into this protest group that took on the municipality, not necessarily in a legal case, although the person who led the charge is a lawyer in private practice, but she marshaled the community to individually submit a whole raft, and I'm talking many thousands of objections to the city of Ekurhuleni.
Yeah.
Exactly, to the point that they were overwhelmed by these objections and then grudgingly conceded that they went back to the drawing board, and in many cases of those many thousands that were submitted, the rates were adjusted more favorably and more reasonably. So there's every opportunity for the citizens of Johannesburg as a collective to apply that pressure with their own individual contributions. So it's a case of, come on, guys, let's all do it and put the city under pressure.
Yeah.
If indeed that is justified. You know, frivolous and vexatious objections don't cut it, and all it does is clutter up the system and it makes it worse for everybody. So I do strongly urge people to be as objective as they possibly can when they're deciding whether or not to object.
If you've just tuned in, welcome to the OUTA Hour. The topic on the table at the moment is the City of Johannesburg current property valuation role and how that's going to change as your property gets revalued in the next couple of months and what you can do about it. I suppose the immediate concern, if we push the issues of service delivery aside for a second, which is a problem that I think as a nation we need to deal with. I'm looking at messages coming out of Ladysmith where people have similar problems to residents in Johannesburg. So it really is a nationwide issue, service delivery in the particular metro or council that you live in. But the immediate concern for Johannesburg homeowners is an overvaluation of your property. Now, CAN as well as OUTA are jumping into this issue. We'll talk about what OUTA and CAN will do to assist you as a Johannesburg ratepayer in just a moment. But let's talk about this webinar that you hosted and what came out of it. And while we chat about that, if you've got a question or if you've got a comment that you would like to throw into this discussion, put it in the comment section down below this video. Tim, let's talk about the webinar that you hosted on this topic today. What were the critical issues that you picked up from the participants, and what kind of feedback did you get?
Okay, good question. There were a lot of people who were complaining about what they regard as unfair and excessive increases in their valuations. And they are obviously the primary target for this process, and we encourage them strongly to engage. One of the things, in fact, probably the strongest common thread of our nearly 400 participants, I mean, the webinar was very, very substantially subscribed, is that people are looking for assistance. Many of them, I would say the majority of them, are actually reaching out saying, please help us. What can we do in order to be able to engage with the municipality to try and get some rational outcome in terms of what they see as an unfair rates or valuation adjustment? So that was without doubt probably the strongest theme, and we are very pleased, in fact, that people are now bringing those concerns to the fore. Now, if I may just carry on with that, and by extension, we are also very involved through the CAN platform in trying to create effective and powerful community organizations, ratepayer associations, if you like, to be able to pool their resources, to be able to get together as a properly constituted body in order to be able to provide A, advice and guidance to their members, and B, to be able to build up resources and launch initiatives and engagements with the municipality, which hopefully bring about some kind of meaningful and useful outcome. So there's a there are many prongs to this. First of all, we will obviously help where we can with individual ratepayers, but also through encouraging ratepayers who may be already part of a community association or who are considering doing that. The CAN platform, without doubt, provides them with the power and the structure in order to be substantially more effective.
We'll talk about that. We'll talk about OUTA and the CAN platform and what it can do to assist you and how to get involved in it. If you've just come into the conversation, we'll repeat the access point for you and what CAN and OUTA can do for you as a Johannesburg ratepayer. But we're dipping into the comment section as we roll through this conversation on the OUTA Hour. And I'm looking at a comment that's come in again from Steve. Steve says, City of Johannesburg, scam. Sewage is based on land size, and East Rand pays sewage on water usage. I mean, this is something I wasn't aware of, and Steve has picked up on. I guess that there are property owners who go through this process and how we get charged with a fine tooth comb. Do you think there are any aspects of our bills, our rates and taxes bill, we used to call it in the old days at the end of the month, that the city needs to look at and reorganize? City of Johannesburg based on land size when it comes to sewage? Should they be basing it on water usage rather?
Tom, I think without a doubt there is ample opportunity to improve the processes and the efficiencies of the billing system. Johannesburg is notorious for some billing issues, and they've been around for many, many years. And while we talk about Johannesburg, I must emphasize that this is not confined to COJ.
Okay.
This is a countrywide problem. And in fact, there's probably a direct correlation between municipalities that are right on their knees and either delivering no services at all or very, very poor services, and the extent to which they bump up their valuations in an attempt to try and gather in more revenue.
More money.
So,
yeah.
I think, yeah, absolutely. So by law, one is obliged to pay rates, and that puts consumers or ratepayers into a very invidious position, because it's without doubt in many cases sparking this reaction which says, I'm getting less, but I'm paying more. How come? Come on, guys, let's get this fixed.
I'm putting myself in the position of a homeowner in Johannesburg or anywhere in the country where your valuation is about to change or will change in the future. And my immediate question that I have in my mind is, how do I find out what the value of my property is? I'm looking at a comment that's coming from Lynette Dawkin, and Lynette says, get estate agents to assist with comparative market analysis for owners to assist them with their home value against other home values in the area. They should do it free of charge. But let me put that question to you, Tim. If I've got a home in Johannesburg and it's about to change in value, how do I satisfy myself that the value that I'm going to see is accurate and reflective? How do I find out what the value of my property is without selling it?
Okay, good question. There are many ways, and what one comes up with in terms of one's own view of what the value of the property is essentially an aggregation of all of those various influences. First of all, there are independent organizations such as Lightstone, with whom we have a professional supportive relationship, and I'm not necessarily punting them, but they're very prominent in this space.
Sure.
They will do an independent valuation of any property where the owner or the person who manages that property makes that request. There's a small fee involved, but I think what it does do is it gives you a pretty comprehensive report based on a multitude of factors, which you've partly alluded to already. The other route to go is, of course, to engage with estate agents, and many of the larger estate agency organizations have in-house experts who are rates and valuations professionals who will be able to give that advice. Whether it comes free or whether there's a service fee paid for that is neither here nor there, because what one is seeking at the end of the day is a legitimate and well-reasoned comparison based to what the city is now presenting ratepayers with. And then, of course, one's own assessment of what goes on in one's neighborhood, trying to be as objective as possible, taking into account local developments, what's happened in the last 4 years, have property prices gone up or down, is the tone of the neighborhood improving or was it declining, are services being rendered, are there developments in the near neighborhood, has it bumped up my properties? There are a whole multitude of factors, and my advice, frankly, is to put all of that kind of what for the average citizen is somewhat speculative stuff into the hands of a professional and ask them to give you a well-reasoned and a well-thought-out comparison so that one can then submit an objection to the municipality saying, that's what the market says and that's what the professionals say compared to what you are telling me. I don't believe the two are compatible.
You know, I'm thinking back to my early 20s, and one of my first jobs was as an estate agent's assistant for Lou Geffen Properties back then. And one of the things I learned going into houses asking for mandates, because that's what agents are ideally looking for, is a mandate to have exclusivity on your property to sell it for a certain amount of time. What the seller thinks the property is worth is always different to what the buyer thinks the property is worth. So there's a lot of subjectivity involved in valuations. But I'm just thinking of platforms like Property 24, where you can go into suburb trends, and I think you pay them a small fee of $40 or $50, you'll actually get even better analysis on what a 3-bedroom place in the area sells for. Perhaps that will give you some objectivity when it comes to valuing in general, a rough estimate, I call it. But I suppose what you're looking for is a closer estimate on your individual property, and you've pointed people to the correct platform for that.
Look, Tom, I think it's always accepted that any valuation is ultimately an opinion.
Yeah.
However that figure is arrived at. So there are various entities, Property 24 is one, and which will give you that kind of advice, whether it actually hits the nail on the head.
Sure.
That could be argued either way, because you can go with exactly the same spec to another professional and say, I want you to do the same exercise. And we put up with two different values.
Yeah.
So but what it does do is it narrows it down. And then there is, of course, the subjectivity involved from a property owner point of view. What came through very strongly in today's webinar is that there is a strong emotional component to this. You know, people have invested a lot of their souls and their family time and their personalities into their property. They've, improved it to their own taste. So they're invested in it. So therefore, the perceived value of the property in the hands of the owner is in many cases likely to be somewhat higher than the objective value which comes from an independent valuer. So I think it's making yet a stronger case for the role of the independent valuer if one finds oneself in a position where one feels to challenge. Yeah.
I'm looking at a comment that's coming from Christo Fenta, who says council representatives are useless. Civil rights groups are the way to go. It indicates the level of trust that residents have in their elected representatives and city officials, doesn't it?
I think so. There are other mechanisms that one can use, but they're not always effective. And our current political system, unfortunately, creates flaws in the interaction between the community and government. And I'm talking particularly ward councillors and PR councillors. In some wards, those people serve their communities particularly well, and they enjoy the support and are very actively engaged with the community. There are others who are there simply because they want to draw a salary, and the quality of the service that they in turn deliver to the community members is questionable. So there are many ways in which to engage, and that is one of them, and it is one that I think should be cultivated, but it's potluck, unfortunately, because remember also that a political appointee who is so-called representing your interests is first and foremost answerable to his or her political party,
right.
and then secondly to the community in which he or she may have been elected.
Party line, Madam Speaker. Terry van der Walt down in KZN says the Westville Ratepayer Association is tackling this head on. Is this where ratepayer associations can play their part?
Absolutely. And this is something we strongly encourage. One of our panelists today was a gentleman called Marcus Borner, who represents the Craig Park Residents Association in Johannesburg. It's one of the oldest and most established community organizations in the city. They've been going since 1937, believe it or not, which is probably earlier than any of us were born. So it's a well-established and a mature organization which very ably and very professionally represents the community that it serves. So yes, Westville Residents Association is one. They have a particular challenge which they're involved in at the moment. But any residents and ratepayer associations, this is very, very fertile ground for them. And I would encourage them to focus intently on the current cycle of valuations and the effect it's going to have on rates.
Claire Feldman's got a comment saying, not once in over 20 years has anyone from the municipality or even a ward councillor been to the area in which I live, which backs up your assertion at the beginning of this chat that the valuation process is a desktop exercise in an office somewhere in the city. It's not an actual person coming to your property.
Look, I think that's true to a point. I think one must acknowledge the realities of the situation. Remember, I said that I think the number is around about 954,000. So it's just short of 1 million registered properties in the city of Johannesburg. It is just literally physically impossible to be able to have an independent physical evaluation of each and every property. So I'm not in any way poo-pooing what that ratepayer has suggested. But yes, it hasn't happened once in 20 years. I accept that. And that's probably very likely. But the only way in which the municipality can come up with any answer at all is to do what is essentially a desktop exercise. Now, when I say desktop, please don't think that I'm being disparaging. That may be the only means that is available to them in order to be able to come up with some result. So it can be productive, but it may not be perfect.
Here's an interesting comment from Bronwyn Heath, who says, honest registered homeowners are a cash cow to be abused by government to increase rates for shoddy service. But that word honest caught my attention. And I was wondering whether there's room for corruption in all of this, whether some people are paying bribes or using loopholes, as they're saying this isn't, a residential property or whatever it might be, to bypass this process, and whether that plays any part in the process itself. Do you think there's corruption involved?
Tom, undoubtedly there is, but the extent to which it prevails in this space is unknown at this stage. Until such time as there is a strong and, shall we say, influential citizen movement which will expose these examples, it's very difficult to go and investigate and to try and get a properly reasoned picture of the extent of corruption in this space. Where I suggest it might be more prevalent is where you have a landlord and tenant relationship, where the landlord, who's probably better versed in the issue of property ownership and what that means, may in fact have multiple properties and may choose to try and manipulate the system as far as they possibly can. But I'm not making any allegations, and I don't have a fix, and I don't think OUTA does either, on the extent of corruption in the valuation and rate space.
This is such a difficult time to increase the price of anything in South Africa. The petrol price has gone through the roof. The food prices, we know, escalate on a monthly basis. People have been hit hard by inflation. Not everyone's making more money than they did a year or two ago. Many people are really on the breadline, and even people with nice properties are feeling the pinch, feeling the squeeze. It puts the city of Johannesburg in a bit of a tough place, doesn't it? Because as a city, you need to increase valuations. It's just logical that that will happen over time. But it's happening at a time when South Africans are going, we can't afford any more. Do you have any sympathy for the city of Johannesburg?
I do, deeply, for both sides of the fence. I think the city officials are in a very invidious position. They are also politically influenced in that their management practices may be questionable, but subject to influence from political parties. Because if you look at the way in which the overhead of the city of Johannesburg is constructed, the increase in staff costs over the last 2 or 3 years way outstrips the budgeted amount and the inflation rate. So we're providing, I think in some cases, protected employment for officials who don't do the job that they should be doing. I come from a consulting background, so I see this loud and clear. But nonetheless, there are undoubtedly opportunities for efficiencies and improving the way the city does things. And the bigger the city gets, and yes, indeed, the Joburg Metro is the biggest of the lot, the opportunities for that kind of thing are legion. And their structuring and their gearing in terms of their overhead is questionable, let me say.
I've noted with interest the recent MMC for transport, Kenny Kunene from the Patriotic Alliance. I know the EFF in the latest reshuffle in the city of Johannesburg has got the health and safety and security portfolio. Do you think that the coalition we've seen in the city of Johannesburg and the new MMCs are going to make any difference?
Tom, it's entirely a speculative question.
Sure.
This coalition trend is so fragile and varies to such an extent in the very, very short term that the new coalition brings with it a new set of approaches and a new idea of what to do. So it's very, very difficult to speculate on that level.
Okay, I won't press you on that one. It's an unfair question, I know. But as a Joburg resident, I think over the years we've become a little bit more conscious of who is in charge of what, and perhaps we'll watch these guys a little closer in the future. I mean, it's one thing complaining about the potholes and the state of our roads, but we need to take it further as residents of Johannesburg or any city and go, right, who's the person in charge? Who's the person responsible? And what are they doing about it?
I think that's absolutely right. And let's go right back to basics. And what we're trying to do is to mobilize citizens in a non-political way to hold government officials accountable for the services that they deliver. And that's the primary objective of all of this.
Yeah. Some early on we were talking about councillors, and there have been comments flashing across the screen. Some people saying our councillor is unapproachable and useless. And you mentioned this. Some councillors are great and others are just there for the money. Carl Edwards mentioned Leah Knott, and I think where people have stood up and assisted their community they represent, they should be applauded for it. Carl Edwards says Leah Knott is my councillor and she's incredible, and OUTA back that up with Leah Knott is an excellent ward councillor. So it's nice to see our viewers and Johannesburg residents saying, hold on, we want to say thank you to our councillor. We need more of that, I suppose, in the political space. So many questions coming through, so many comments coming through, and we're running out of time. This hour is flying by. I'm just looking at Ruben Naidu's comment. Hi, all joined in late. I'm also unhappy with the valuation of my property in Kensington B in Randburg. I'll be using the online objection process to achieve anything positive. Will anything positive come out of it, or is there another more effective way to address this? And I guess that leads into the question, what will OUTA and what will CAN do to assist Johannesburg ratepayers as they go through this process that's going to be a little bit tough on the nerves?
Okay. The objective of CAN is to structure and mobilize communities so that they're more effective at what they do. What OUTA is bringing to the party in terms of this valuation cycle is an opportunity for people to visit our website and to pick up on the process of how they can get assistance, number one, and how they can object. And we'll help guide them through what is a somewhat hostile, dare I say, process at the hands of the COJ. And I'm not being critical, it just is bureaucratic and difficult. So if there's assistance needed from individual ratepayers, we'll do our level best to help them.
Is that a time period you were talking about till the end of March, the 45 days or so that you mentioned a little earlier on? Is that cast in stone, or could that be changed with a little bit of arm twisting and pressure?
Look, if every citizen in the city lodged an objection, I would suggest that they would then relook at the whole cycle. But that is cast in stone from a legislation point of view. The cycle repeats every 4 years. All the municipal budgets have to be approved and implemented by the 1st of June. So this has, it's part of a process, and it's not necessarily a standalone exercise. So there are many things that can't be changed in the short term, but certainly if there is sufficient citizen pressure, they can certainly be changed in the long term. And that's what we're advocating if it's appropriate. Once the system is ticking and once the system is providing the answers, we'll reshift our focus to something which is much more socially important.
Tim, what would you suggest anybody viewing the program and watching the OUTA Hours has concerns about their property valuation to do? I mean, what steps would you encourage them to take?
Okay, 2. One is get directly in touch with the COJ if they can navigate that process. Second, get onto the OUTA website, look at the projects tab, and go to special projects, which is the first point you come to when you scroll down, and that will take you through a process where you can do a similar thing, but with the assistance of OUTA, and we'll guide them through.
All right, 2 quick questions coming in from viewers. One, what was the overall increase in Johannesburg? Is there an average increase?
We don't know.
We don't know yet.
Wow.
That's not yet clear.
Okay.
Because that valuation bill's only just been released.
Will only happen post. Get it. All right. And then the other one is, hi, Tim, do these online objections really work or are they just formalities?
Good question. I think there is a lot of frustration in that space. I think the answer to that is slightly indirect, but if you don't take it up, then certainly nothing will change. And bear in mind that if you do nothing before the 31st of March, what has been thrown at you will stand.
Okay. Tim, the website for CAN, if my memory serves me correct, it's can.org.za. Is that correct? People can go to that website.
Correct. Yep.
Let's get some comment from the CEO of OUTA now, Wayne Divenage, and just ask you, Wayne, why is OUTA looking at this so seriously? Why has it fallen in the spotlight?
Well, Tom, it's part of our expanded strategy. We've started some years ago, a couple of years ago, building the Community Action Networks platform to empower local residents and residents associations. And now we're digging deeper into that space and trying to have a bigger impact on where the pockets of citizens are impacted quite negatively on service delivery and rising costs, and that is in the local government space. So we've dabbled in the space, as I said earlier, with Ekurhuleni. We're now doing it with Joburg. Next month, we're doing it in Cape Town. They also have a property valuations role. And I think it's important that we do start helping citizens to help themselves to become active in the space of challenging and standing up to government abuse of power. And that's what's happening here. So just on the Lightstone report quickly, it is an aggregated and highly efficient an analytic system. Every single property that is sold in this country, they have the details on that. So in your area, any house that's been sold in the last month, 2 months, 6 months, and all of this information feeds into an analytical program, which gives you, they also know, by the way, because they tap into they get this information from the deeds office, having their square meters of every house, and then the land size, and they know what the municipal property valuation is, everything. They put all that into a massive database, and they come up with what is regarded as a very accurate number. But that is still, as Tim says, it's a view, and we all have different opinions of what our house value is, but that's probably the most accurate one that we get. So get that buyer's report. It's 272 Rand. 172, sorry, Rand. It's worth it. It gives you so much information. And I've downloaded it and compared it to my what the valuation is in Joburg's role. And the Joburg value is well over. So I'm going to be objecting. You have to do this, folks. Otherwise, you get stuck with these massive bills for another 5 years.
What would your message be to ratepayers in Johannesburg and around South Africa, Wayne?
Get involved. Put pressure on your local residents association. Ask them what they're doing about holding local government to account. Stop building your walls high and fixing your own potholes and looking after your own areas and gating your communities. I'm not saying that's bad. It's good that you can do that, but you need to. We don't live in islands. You can't live in this siloed environment. If the city around you collapses, it collapses, and you go down with it. So we need to start going to budget sessions. We need to start supporting organizations like Tim is doing in the whole CAN space, and your resident associations that are holding government to account. Let's hold local government to account. There are many ways to do that, and watch the space in CAN, but let's start with this property valuation process.
You've been watching a discussion with Tim Tyrrell, the project manager of CAN. Tim, thank you for joining us this evening. I know a lot of people have got a lot of value from the discussion. We thank you for that.
Sure. Pleasure, Tom.
And a good night to you. Hope that you have an evening with some power. See, load shedding. I think in my area, load shedding is off till after midnight, from 6 o'clock at night or something ridiculous. It's what everyone's complaining about in the country today, isn't it? Now, wow, thank you for all the comments that are coming in. Lots of comments flashing across the screen, lots of questions, lots of valuable input and insight from your side as we go through this OUTA Hour. And I just want to thank you for all this participation. It's lovely to see the comments flashing across the screen. Now, let's talk about OUTA's vision for 2023. What's coming up for you as a consumer of OUTA's information and content across the various platforms? And to tell us about that, we've got Ilse Salzwedel, who will join us, as well as Wayne Duvenage to expand on this. Let's start with you, Wayne. What's coming up? What is OUTA's vision for 2023? What can Outarians look forward to?
Okay, we've left this very little time to do this, Tom, so I'm going to try and do it very quickly. I want to hand over also to Ilse to talk a little bit about what we're doing. Our vision doesn't change. Our vision is about doing the work that we do to add to the prosperity of South Africa. But it's the strategy that we adopt behind it that hasn't changed or shifted much. We continue to hold government to account through our accountability division, building cases and tackling irrational policy. But as I said earlier on, we have been working a lot in this background of empowering citizens in the local government space, and that's where we're focusing a bit on now. In the communication space, the change that we're going to be adopting. So this is our last OUTA Hour for now. We don't know whether we're going to reintroduce it in a different style or format in future years. Who knows? But the thing is, this show has been going on for quite a while. We've got a lot of value out of it. You've been great, Tom. But we now also want to start experimenting with other avenues like podcasting, like vodcasting, shorter videos and interviews on prominent matters and with prominent people on aspects that are current and relevant, and not have to wait for a Wednesday to get to those things. Sometimes things are breaking. So that's really where we're starting to move. I'm going to hand over to Ilse, who's done a lot of podcasts for us in the past year or so, and she can explain what we're doing in that aspect of the comm strategy.
Well, let's ask Ilse Salzwedel to give us, and we've seen the build-up, Ilse, that something new is coming. Share it with us.
Well, Wayne basically summed it up perfectly. Good evening, everybody. Podcast is nothing new at OUTA, but we thought with the news coming at us so fast and furiously, especially the last few weeks, and I guess the whole coming year will be like this, we need to react quicker. We can't always wait for a Wednesday and get the experts. Also, people are very, very busy. They can't always join on a Wednesday evening. I'm talking about team members and outside experts and people of interest. And a podcast is also a much more convenient way to consume media for our supporters, because you can literally listen to the podcast. You download it and you can listen to it in your car, on your way to work, on the treadmill at the gym. Life changed, and while we all enjoyed webinars and podcasts during lockdown, things are going back to normal, and people are out and about, and they don't want to be tied down to certain viewing times, and also not to the screen so much. We find that even a webinar isn't attended that well because people are tired of screens and tired of living inside. And yeah, so we're just moving with the times. Samantha van Nispen proved that point yesterday when she did a TikTok on the rates issue, and that TikTok went viral. And I mean, that's just an indication of different platforms, different needs, different audiences, and we would very much like to reach more people. So we will be being...
No, go ahead. That's okay. Go ahead.
No. We will be sharing the links to the podcast on all social media. It will be on our website, and we are hosting it on a very, very well-known podcast platform, IONO, and that's also where you will find most radio content in any case. So it's there. We've had success with podcasts in the past, lots of listens, and we will also keep it topical and timely. So if there's breaking news today, you can expect that there will be a short podcast on that in the next 24 hours. We don't have to wait a week.
So where should OUTA subscribers and members and people who support this organization, South Africans in general, where should we be going to press that follow button? Which platforms should we be looking for OUTA's content on?
Like I said, we will share the links on all social media. So if you're following us on Facebook, you will see the link there. Twitter, and it will also be shared on YouTube, the whole podcast, but not with video, of course.
Sure.
And then Iona FM host, there is an OUTA channel on Iona FM, and you can follow us there as well. But it will also be on the website, just like all our other content.
Anything else? Yeah. Anything else to add, Ilse, before we say goodbye for the evening?
No, we just want to thank you and good luck, and thank you very much for memorable OUTA hours. And I'm handing over to Wayne.
Okay, thanks, Ilse, and well done. Keep up the great work. It's exciting times, you know, when one introduces new initiatives, changes the constant with us, constantly revolving and evolving the organization. And comms is such a big element of what we do at OUTA. It's a big team. It's a focused team. And they do an excellent job in getting our traction and our message out there through the various media houses. You know, I think if we're in digital media and on television on average, must be 3-4 times a week television, and every digital platform is featuring basically all of our stories. So it's due to the credibility of the brand and the messaging that we built up. And I think that's all kudos to Ilse, Sam, and the comms team. But yeah, lovely stuff, and lots to look forward to, Tom, as we go forward and as with this organization. We've got a lot of work to do, and today's budget speech is giving us lots of interviews to still get on to. But Tom, thanks a lot. I really mean it. It's been great working with you, but it's not farewell. We're going to obviously stay in touch and see what else we're going to be doing in the near future, or at some stage, I'm sure. But good luck. Tell us about your plans. What are you going to be doing?
Well, firstly, I mean, it's whenever you end a media product, and no media product lives forever. We know that media products have lifespans. If you'll allow me a personal indulgence for a minute or two, I'll just take you back 4 years as you watch this program tonight as we end it. And firstly say thank you. Thank you to Wayne Duvenage, who is just a mountain of a man when it comes to integrity and ethics. And if you deal with Wayne on a weekly or daily basis, you'll know that Wayne Duvenage's heart is in the right place when it comes to South Africa and the future of our country. It's been an enormous pleasure to have worked with Wayne Duvenage over the last 4 years or so, as well as a thank you from my side to Sam and the comms team and the team that helped put this program together, and also everybody at OUTA who has enriched my life as I've walked through these corridors and interacted with almost every staff member at OUTA. Whenever Wayne talks about the 45 or so passionate people at OUTA, I've witnessed it firsthand. I've had the privilege of being inside this building, meeting all the team members, and I can just rubber stamp that as an ordinary boy from Springs to say that those words ring true, that you really do have a team of extremely passionate and dedicated South Africans fighting injustice and maladministration and tax abuse on your behalf. It's easy when you say thank you on a show like this to focus on the team that puts it together, but you know the names of the people that work on this team. There are always people in the background that when I walked in here today, I was greeted by OUTA's receptionist, Fikile Dada, who every time I walk into this building greets me with warmth and kindness, helpful person. And I wanted to bring up just 2 or 3 names along the way, people who work in the background, who I think deserve a thank you from me at least for their hospitality and their kindness and their love and their generosity and support. And the first person I'd like to say thank you to, besides the team that puts this show together, is Fikile Dada, for just helping me photocopy things and helping me prepare for shows and any number of helpful things that Fikile has done. As well as Eva Sieletso, who, you know, makes the coffee and cleans my coffee mug. It's just amazing that someone will do that for me with such love and passion and care. So thank you, Eva. And then Ali Gule, who over the 4 years continuously sends me messages of support and helpful hints and ideas. And so I'd like to single those 3 people out who aren't necessarily in the spotlight on the OUTA Hour every week and say thank you, Fikile. Thank you, Eva. Thank you, Ali Gule. You know, 4 years ago, my life took a hell of a turn, and I was always known as a broadcaster who was open and honest about my life and feelings. And although I've touched on it before, and you've gone with me through some of these personal journeys of mine, but 4 years ago in 2018, I won the Liberty Radio Award for Best Breakfast Show on radio in this country. It was a high point in my radio career. And just a month or 2 afterwards, the house I was living in and shared with my best friend burned down, and I watched my best friend die in those flames. It was a hell of a low point for me. I didn't have much time to think about what kind of media star I wanted to be or what the next thing was, but I knew I wanted to do something that had some kind of substance. I knew I wanted to contribute. I knew I wanted to participate in something that meant something to South Africans. And it was at that time that I think it was Wayne and I sat down. The idea of an OUTA Hour was conceptualized where people could join us live and interact. When the show started, I never thought it would go on for 4 years. When you build new and difficult media product, when everything's new, it might have a lifespan of a couple of weeks or a couple of months. And we've managed to squeeze 4 years out of the OUTA show, or the OUTA Hour. And every week, you were there. Every week, I had something to look forward to. Every week, I knew I was going back into the studio Wednesday night to meet you on the other side of the camera. And together we would discuss issues of national importance. And you've been there every single Wednesday night. This show has flashed across probably 2 million screens in the last 4 years, and thousands of people have come in and out and participated. Always you. But I have to say, just from a personal side, as a broadcaster and someone who spent a lot of time in his life creating media content and entertainment content, that I've become increasingly restless. The last year or so, these traumas and tragedies of the past are starting to become shadows rather than something I live with on a daily basis, and a burning desire has returned to produce my own commercial media product, to produce the kind of entertainment product I was putting out on the radio all those years ago, and continuing with that, picking it up again, so to speak. So I'm at a point where I have to create my own Tom London show again and put those kind of shows on for you. And doing that means a new image. It means crazy hairstyles and earrings and clothes and sets and just the crazy stuff that you attach to growing an image or brand in the entertainment space. And so it means a new direction for me, and the timing is perfect. As OUTA reevaluates their content selection, as I reevaluate my content offerings, the timing just seems to be perfect. So look out for me on your social media channels. If I'm allowed a plug without going into detail, on April 3rd, I'll be putting the Tom London Show back together and literally rewinding 4 or 5 years and picking up the pieces that fell all those years ago. So the last thank you is for you joining me on a Wednesday night. You've always been there. It's an enormous privilege as a broadcaster, as a content producer, to be invited into people's homes, onto their phones, laptops, iPads and plasma screens, to be a visitor in your life, to take an hour of your week out of your time and share it with you. It really is a great gift that you've given me. So I'd really like to reserve the last thank you for you as you watch this program tonight. You have been a guiding light in my life. You've given me a reason to get up on many dark days, and you've helped me get through many dark times, perhaps without even knowing it. So I echo what Wayne says. There's new stuff coming for OUTA, and there's new stuff coming for me. And I just want to say thank you. Thank you to the OUTA team, this incredible organization. I'll never not be part of the OUTA spirit and the team. And I just want to thank you, Wayne, in the last second or two that we've got, to say that really appreciate the support that you guys have given me over the last 4 years, and the continued support that you show as I build my new media product. And I really, really do appreciate it. And as we do that, load shedding kicks in, and that's probably the signal to say goodbye. goodbye. Thank you, Wayne, and thank you, OUTA.
It's been great having you. We'll stay in touch. Good luck and all the best. Thanks to our viewers. We'll be staying in touch with you in many other ways.
And on that note, we say goodbye for now on the OUTA Hour. I hope to pop across your Facebook page, your YouTube feeds and TikTok feeds and Instagram and all these new exciting platforms we've got. Perhaps we'll catch up in the future. My door is always open. So, good night to you. I wish you, as always, 7 days of happiness, 7 days of luck and love, enough money in your pocket and enough food in the fridge, and that you continue to support OUTA in the great work they do and to consume the content that is coming up, the exciting content that is coming your way on, the OUTA platforms. Until we meet again on the online waves, I'm Tom London.